In today's Federal Flash, we cover major Supreme Court rulings to protect Dreamers from deportation and LGBTQ employees from workplace discrimination. We'll also share highlights from 2 congressional hearings on the challenge of reopening schools, competing proposals for police reform, and the $1.5 trillion infrastructure package unveiled by House Democrats. Hi, I'm Philip Lovell, and I'm joined by Ann Heislip. Let's begin with the Supreme Court's decision on the fate of DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Ann?
In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration's attempt to rescind DACA. Nearly 700,000 young people have received DACA protections since the program's inception in 2010, allowing undocumented youths who arrived in the U.S. as children to pursue higher education and work without fear of deportation. Joining the court's 4 liberal justices, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the majority that the Department of Homeland Security violated the Administrative Procedure Act by rescinding DACA in an arbitrary and capricious manner. Thus, the decision offers a welcome but temporary reprieve for DACA recipients. Only congressional action can more permanently protect undocumented immigrant youths and families.
Following the decision, All4Ed CEO and President Deborah Delisle said, quote, "For years, DACA has given thousands of young people, many of whom have never known a home other than the United States, the chance to achieve the American dream by pursuing an education and a career without fear of deportation. We need Congress to step up immediately with legislation that provides protection to these vital members of our communities and our education system."
DACA wasn't the only major decision from the court last week. In a landmark 6-3 ruling, the court declared that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits workplace discrimination on the basis of sex, applies to sexual orientation and gender identity. The majority opinion states, quote, "An employer who fires an individual merely for being gay or transgender defies the law," end quote. We don't yet know how the decision will impact education. Do anti-discrimination protections for LGBTQ employees extend to LGBTQ students? How will this impact the ability of transgender students to compete in sports and use bathrooms of their choice? And what about religious schools? This case did not address a religious freedom argument, meaning that arguments regarding religious liberty will have to be addressed in future cases.
Meanwhile, both Senate and House Education Committees held hearings on the challenges of bringing students and staff back to the classroom safely this fall. Looming budget cuts and the need for additional federal funds were top of mind. Nebraska Education Commissioner Matthew Blomstead warned of a, quote, "perfect storm as we face increased needs and decreased resources." He projected sustained cuts of 20% or more for K-12 schools. Eric Gordon, CEO of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, said Cleveland will prioritize bringing students with the highest needs, like students with disabilities and English learners, back for in-person instruction, echoing one of the recommendations All4Ed made for prioritizing equity in the response to coronavirus. Tennessee's Education Commissioner Penny Schwinn is emphasizing another one of our recommendations: student access to technology for remote learning, which is no longer, in her words, a nice to have. Republicans were skeptical of the call for additional funds. Both Lamar Alexander and Virginia Fox, chairman and ranking member respectively of the Senate and House Education Committees, wanted more information on how aid from the CARES Act had been spent and why CARES Act funds were insufficient.
Elsewhere on Capitol Hill, House Democrats and Senate Republicans have introduced competing bills to address police reform in the wake of the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and numerous other Black Americans at the hands of police. The Republican bill, sponsored by South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, would require further disclosures about police use of deadly force, codify reporting on the use of no-knock warrants, and give incentives for localities to ban chokeholds. Related to education, Scott's bill would create a federal commission on the social status of Black men and boys to examine racial disparities in schools, but not much else. His bill does not address the presence of police in schools and even the proposed commission would not be tasked with considering disparities that affect Black girls and other students of color. Senator McConnell has promised to consider the legislation this week. The Democrats' proposal, which already passed the House Judiciary Committee and is expected to receive a floor vote this week, goes much further. The bill would create a national registry for data on police misconduct, ban chokeholds and no-knock warrants, alter the qualified immunity standard so victims of police brutality could seek damages, and lower the bar to prosecute officers for misconduct. The House bill would also require the Attorney General to develop uniform national standards for law enforcement, including school resource officers and those working in juvenile justice. We'll report back as both bills move through the legislative process.
Finally, House Democrats released a $1.5 trillion infrastructure package, Moving America Forward, which merges several existing priorities into a single bill that covers everything from transportation and housing to climate change. Critically, the Moving America Forward package includes the Reopen and Rebuild America Schools Act, which would invest $130 billion in grants and bond authority in high-poverty schools with facilities that pose health and safety risks to students and staff. In the near term, funds could be used on an emergency basis to help schools safely reopen by renovating facilities to meet CDC guidelines. In addition, program funds could also support access to broadband and high-speed internet in schools, and $5 billion is provided to expand home internet access. That's all for today. For an alert when the next Federal Flash is available, email alliance@allfored.org. Thanks for watching.
Federal Flash is the Alliance for Excellent Education's video series on important developments in education policy in Washington, D.C. Watch online at allfored.org/federalflash, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or listen to Federal Flash wherever you get your podcasts.